Thank you for the comment, and we can comment further when we go into the comment section. So now, do we just accept the?
Yes, basically she's replacing what's in here with this.
Okay, and so
it really we don't have to approve it.
Okay, there's no need to approve anything. Thank you for your comment. You can comment in a moment. So, as we currently stand, and I'm muddling through this, so please forgive me. We have 3 resolutions. Resolution 1 is the newer amended that you have before you on the handout, reproductive freedom and healthcare. 2 is reproductive freedom, healthcare, and social safety nets. Number 3 is Ukraine, shorthand for Ukraine. So as to the first, reproductive freedom and healthcare, does anyone have comments? Would anyone like to comment, good, bad, or indifferent about resolution number 1?
If I might, just to kind of set the stage, what we typically do is as each resolution comes to you in this public hearing, this is your chance to speak to it, ask any questions about it from the sponsors, and have a little bit of maybe a discussion on it. And then after each resolution has been in open session, public session, the public hearing will close, and then the resolutions committee members will then consider each resolution, and they bring a recommendation to full convention tomorrow when we're back in Trinity, whether the committee recommends voting yes on the resolution, voting no on the resolution, possibly further amendments, deferring to another year. There are actions they will recommend. But the purpose right now in the public hearing is to discuss and ask any questions and make any comments that you want the committee members to hear. So, sorry.
Thank you, John. John's he's my mentor in this whole Vice Chancellor gig. So thank you for that. Essentially, this is the opportunity to make any comments, questions, concerns, or otherwise that you might have. This is the opportunity to do this before we give it to the committee. So as to reproductive freedom and health care, does anyone have anything they would like to add or clarify their thoughts or any questions they might have? Yes, and your name, sir?
Yes, my name is Bill Groh, and I'm from St.
Do you mind standing up?
Thank you. My question is, why the change? What is the need for the change?
That was
I'm hearing them, so I can't.
Okay, Beth, would you come up here, please, if you don't mind, and please explain for the attendees why we have why you made the changes that were made in reproductive freedom and health care.
I think they're raising a point of order. You've withdrawn the originals, and they're asking if they need to accept the amended version.
That was my first question, actually, and I
think the correct
believe
term is substitute.
the answer is yes.
Yes, substitute, yeah, resolution,
Yes.
yeah.
Uh,
We need to accept it.
We need
So-
to accept it before we talk about it?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would propose is that the amended reproductive freedom and health care resolution be accepted as a committee, as a friendly amendment,
As an amended version of the original.
as an amended version of the original. We're all counting on John
Right.
here, yeah. So I think that has to be, yes, I think we do.
I think the committee does.
Yeah, I move that we accept it, we accept the resolution, the amended version of the original resolution.
So this one is one,
I move to accept it.
the one that has to take out the women.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay, then now we can discuss
Okay,
it.
so the committee having accepted revised or edited proposed resolution 1 pertaining to reproductive freedom and health care. We offer Beth to discuss as the sponsor to discuss why the amendment was made and the purpose and goal of the resolution.
All
Not the
righty.
amendment, but the edits rather. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. The resolution that we have just identified as number 1 is entitled, the woman's is crossed out, reproductive freedom and health care. there were two versions of the original resolutions submitted to be included in the digest. One was a version that was submitted by St. John's Charleston's Vestry. The other was submitted by the Kanawha Deanery. And I am the common point for each of those resolutions. The St. John's resolution did not, although it was submitted timely, was not included in the digest for whatever reason.
And I'll speak to that, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. I mean,
it was timely submitted, and in our office, it looked so similar, no one noticed that there were changes, and simply it was set aside as a duplicate copy of the original, and so that was an oversight really by the diocesan office.
all right, thank you.
Sure.
And in conversation yesterday, it appeared that the best solution to the divergent resolutions, one of which was not published, was for me to take a stab at merging the two versions. And truly, the only difference between what is in the digest and what is before you as number one is the correction of using the term women's and changing it to an individual. And the reason for that, frankly, was I was educated on this, is a transgender issue. Because transgender, I don't know how to say this, I'm not sure I'm saying this in the right way. A transgender male person can become pregnant. So it isn't just a women's issue. And so that is truly the only change between what was published in the digest and what is before you. And I will say that the reason I was the catalyst behind this resolution. I am of an age where, I had cousins, I had friends who had back alley abortions before Roe v. Wade was passed. And I had a cousin who died from a botched abortion. And further, I just feel very strongly that no exception for rape or incest in the law that was passed by our state legislature is pretty close to, from my perspective, to being a sin. That no consideration was taken, and there is an example that a prosecutor spoke to, which was that a 12-year-old girl became pregnant by her father. And it turned out she didn't even know what sex was. She was a 12-year-old girl. She had no idea that she was pregnant. Nobody even noticed until she was well beyond what would be the time frames proposed by our state legislature. And we are a progressive faith. And if we are not going to stand up for the rights of women and for the rights of the individual and that 12-year-old girl and any other incest or rape victim, then it will be a sad day for me. I want to say to you that the back page is actually the statement, the official statement of the Episcopal Church on this issue. And this stands to this day. And I think I've spoken long enough.
No, you're going to speak again. Thank you.
Oh.
And so, but I do want to be, I'm sensitive to the tight deadline that we
Yeah.
have. Beth, thank you so much. Now, before we move on to the second amended resolution, if there's any questions or comments that anyone here would like to have for the committee to consider before we go into our deliberations, you can stay here because you're going to do this again.
Okay.
So I'm going to open the floor to any comments, concerns, issues, or anything for our committee to take into committee meeting. Or is there anything? Yes,
My
ma'am.
concern was.
And your name, please.
Susan Benson.
Okay.
Holy Trinity in Logan.
Thank you.
My concern was the word individual could mean the rapist, the incestuous father, could offer an objection to an abortion. Is that, am I reading it wrong?
I don't know. That's an interesting insight. It really
The
is.
right of an individual to make an informed reproductive decision, including the termination of pregnancy, or that will limit access to safe reproductive health. Now, would the rapist, although they probably don't, want to have that child, but anyway, say it's somebody in the family or, something like that, and it is a child.
Would you propose something along the lines of an amendment excluding
I don't know how to word it.
pregnancy due to incest or rape or something like that? Is that something you have in mind?
Or maybe the pregnant individual.
Yeah.
Right.
Because, to me, individual could be that rapist or that father or that uncle or that babysitter or that
No, that's
school
that's a
personnel.
very good, that's a really good
Yeah.
insight.
And
Thank you.
definitely if it was a parent, they can object.
Yeah, period.
And so, yeah.
That's very good food for
Could it
thought.
just be the word female rather than woman?
We tried that.
Because transgender,
Actually, it'll be a female.
A moment, one at a time. The pregnant individual. I think that's a pretty good workaround. Someone has proposed, instead of the individual, the pregnant individual.
Yes.
I noticed you had your hand up a moment
I was
ago.
just going to suggest the pregnant individual. So.
Okay. What are the thoughts on pregnant individual? Just to know, see what the room thinks.
Yep.
Sounds like we've had a pretty productive discussion. Any other comments about friendly amended resolution number 1 concerning reproductive freedom and health care? Does the committee want to have any further discussion, or shall we move
I
on?
think we're ready to move on.
Okay. Now, thank you all for those insights. That was very useful and very helpful. Thank you. Now for amended resolution number 2.
And you're going to need to do the same thing. They have withdrawn the original. Now we need a motion for the committee to accept the proposed
Okay,
amended.
so
I so move.
Okay.
So now we can discuss.
Thank you.
So now it's before you.
So, again, I'll leave it first and foremost to the submitting of the individual, Beth, who submitted the resolution and that is before this meeting right now. Would you like to tell us the why or the motivation behind this resolution?
Sure. Given the legislation that was passed by our state legislature with no safety nets put in place to care for the child, to care for the mother who is now responsible for a child, it just seemed appropriate that there should be that the person who, the man who impregnated the woman or the person should bear does. Yeah, the only difference again between the original number 2 and the amended number 2 is the replacement of women for individuals, and that may be another point at which we need to make that clarification. But that's the purpose of this.
Beth, thank you. Do we have a comment on resolution?
Well, I do on this amendment. On the bottom of paragraph 1, it says when a woman cannot even know. I would like to ask for it be substituted might not. Because at that age, yes, you can take a pee test and find out that there's possibly a pregnancy, and saying cannot even know is not true.
Okay. But also, we've taken out woman. That's what threw me for a curveball. When the individual,
Individual might not even know.
and you're proposing might not even know as opposed to cannot even know.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Any other comments or any other thoughts about might not even know?
And we're going to change this to pregnant individual also, right?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah,
I
but we're
think.
not changing the word man, and we're taking out the word woman. There's in the second paragraph, where it says a man causing the impregnation, that's gonna be fixed too.
That's why we do it. That's why we do this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So in the second paragraph, which line? Second full paragraph?
Like six
Okay.
line down.
So there's a suggestion that the word man be removed Or,
Just saying, if we're gonna make it all.
sure.
Individual, then.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Any other discussion points or concerns? Yes, ma'am.
I am confused by first paragraph where it says, Kerry determined unviable fetus.
Yeah, I saw that.
Well, there are other
Could be
reasons
viable.
than viability to request an abortion. And somewhere along the line, if you continue that pregnancy, that fetus is gonna be viable.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point to be. So, can you say, the term unviable fetus is a bit maybe narrow, or is a term that maybe needs some clarification?
Perhaps we just replace it with viable.
With what?
With viable.
Viable, or maybe no word at all, but just a fetus. No word at all?
Can I explain what that was
Please do,
supposed to
Beth, I
address?
appreciate that.
The use of that phrase was for instances where the woman knows that she needs to abort the fetus because there are health issues for the fetus, that child is not going to live outside the womb. The doctor knows it, but the hospital cannot take action, or a provider cannot take action until the woman's life is at risk. And that's what that was to address. But I get your point, and it is misleading without a fuller explanation, and I am fine with it
Yes, sir.
being removed or adjusted.
I would say the wording should be whether the mother or the fetus are in danger of their life.
Or the pregnant individual, or the fetus.
Yes.
That's
I think what might be confusing is the earlier part of that sentence is referring to rape and incest exceptions,
But
which
not-
has really nothing to do with whether the pregnancy is viable or
That's
non-viable.
a fair, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see.
But I do like the suggestion, I mean, if you just say the pregnant individual and.
Or the child to be.
Right. Yeah, because, for example, viable is a term of art, and it opens up a whole other box. Viability is really a term of art that's, well, we still don't know what it is, according to the Supreme Court. Right, okay. Are there other, yes, sir.
I'm Bob Crawford. I'm somewhat concerned about the issues with viability because women early on in their pregnancy have an amniocentesis analysis, which may lead to a conclusion that this might be a Down syndrome child. But that is not a viable person. And I think that needs to be thought through a little bit so that we don't start using this terminology to support abortions that we really shouldn't be doing.
Yes, ma'am. There's another comment. Thank you.
From Morgantown, I think maybe we're all on the same page about this, those who are speaking, but I see that the second sentence begins, among such legislation is the House bill, which describes what we're all bickering about.
Right.
So I would propose that we might consider striking that, or just some of it, and say among such legislation is this bill, which requires individuals to act to terminate their pregnancy within 6 weeks, and not get into detail.
I'm not supposed to comment, but I was thinking the same thing when I read it the other day. So that's a very good point. Thank you.
And keep in mind that through this public hearing process, the committee can take all of these comments, which we're hearing on the floor now, and may well bring back an amended version to full convention tomorrow, reflecting the discussion.
That's resolution 2, social safety nets. Any other discussion about resolution 2 before we go on to Ukraine? More discussions, concerns, thoughts, insights? Thoughts? Yes, ma'am.
Vivian Post from St. John's. My concern is that we're sort of discussing viability and whether or not that language should be in there. like, I'll use Beth's example of the 12-year-old, there are other factors besides viability. And we don't really address that, you know, it is the welfare of the individual carrying that child as well as.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't mean it's, but you know, number one, we expand it to individual, and then this number two, we've got some pretty narrow terms there, and that's good food for thought for the committee.
Yeah, there's all kinds of factors, and we kind of narrowed the scope so much here. that,
Right.
We might want to look at that.
Has the committee taken this?
We've been taking that, we're taking that.
We're good? All right. Any other discussions on resolution 2?
Can I just,
Please.
just for some clarity, because it would contradict resolution 1, we're not saying that the woman's health has to be at danger, the fetus's health has to be in danger, that it has to be because of rape or incest or anything else. We're not saying that. We're saying that a 30-year-old married woman who gets pregnant also has, and I'm quoting from resolution 1, the determination of pregnancy as a private individual decision. And that decision gets made with or without her family, with her doctor, and nothing should impede that choice, regardless of viability or how that pregnancy happened.
Correct.
Is that right? Right. So 2, even though we're talking about viability, incest, and rape, it really has nothing to do with that. Is that correct?
Well, it has nothing to do with the first resolution, but the reason that those things are named is because they are in House Bill 302.
Right, I
So
understand
it's by way of explanation.
Right.
And if you want to strip that language, that would be okay, that viability language.
Any other discussions, concerns, suggestions on number 2? Okay, we will move on to item number 3, and that is resolution to condemn Russian Federation aggression against Ukraine. Do you wish to speak on this?
I
As to the
do.
why? Okay.
I do. Again, this resolution was submitted both by St. John's Vestry and the Connaught Deanery. And, you know, it just seems to me, to us, that it's an unholy war. And while, you know, we are limited in what we can do, we can certainly put a stake in the ground and say, this is our position as a people of faith. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So, we condemn the war against Russia. Any comments, concerns? I said Russia, excuse me, I apologize. Russian aggression against Ukraine, excuse me. Thank you. Does anyone wish to address any concerns, issues, anything in proposed resolution number 3? We all seem to be on board with that, which seems to be, okay. Well, you guys are amazing. It's 3 o'clock, and my job is to get you out of here by 3 o'clock so you can move on. So thank you so much for...
Again, this concludes the public portion. The committee members will now take all of your feedback and all of your comments and will bring forward recommendations from the committee at the convention floor session tomorrow morning.
Thank you. And that concludes the open meeting. The committee will now do what committees do.
To their committee.
We're gonna do that here? Yeah.
We've got to kick them out.
I'll move around. Yeah, I'll move around, yeah.
Thank you.
I've done this before.
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, that's okay. It wouldn't be I just remember being so just a little more testy than that. A little more heated, yes. Yeah. Good job.
Thank you. I do
seminars, but I never, don't they need to know the rules?
This parliamentary stuff, Robert Rules stuff, like I felt you over here, you did excellent, but you had the same energy that I had at my first vestry meeting where I was leading. Where somebody's like, oh no, we've got to adopt the judgment, not accept it, we've got to receive the treasurer's report, not like.
Well, I think that's some, they didn't teach us that in seminary. How to lead a vestry meeting, they've done maybe a session